Well, if you got a dollar, well, just lousy down. You know that I got rhythm that could suit your budget fine.
So I wanted to do a quick video showcasing some items that are currently listed on my eBay store as an auction. I have not done an eBay auction in quite some time. I've been, scheduling wise, just had a few other things going on with theater coming active again, and really just trying to catch up on a lot of stuff. And this was a lot of items I picked up at an auction. And my original intention had been to divide them up into different themes or categories and sell them all individually. But because I just have to recognize my limitations on my time and what I can do, I've decided to lot these all together, put them up on my eBay as an auction, and just kind of see what the market does with them. Because there are some cool individual pieces here, and I think these will be attractive to a variety of collectors of actually multiple different areas, sewing, vintage textiles, tools, things like that. So I want to kind of showcase some of these groupings, show them a little bit more up close. So I'm not sure this first area counts as a specific subcategory of collecting, but I pulled all of the metal stuff to the side and kind of going to showcase all of these. And there's just some neat things in here. So these I'm pretty sure are some sort of a closure. And initially I thought maybe, they somehow latched into each other. But if you did that, suddenly the back end, the back of this would show. So I don't think that's the case. And there might be a hint on this one. There's still a little piece of fabric attached that almost makes it feel like this was almost a zipper pull, but I don't know what zipper pulls look like when they're independent like that. So there's kind of a sharp point there, and it looks like there's these holes, so this would be stitched down. So I still think it's some sort of a fastener. I just don't know why that fabric is there. So there's two of those. There's this tiny little hook, and as much as I love vintage and antiques, I do not know the difference between a button hook and like a shoe button hook versus a coat button hook versus a glove button hook. This is relatively small. So I'm wondering if this is for gloves, because this could fit into a lady's handbag. And it's so small that, if it was for a shoe or something, if you were doing it yourself, you'd have to bend down pretty far to actually get close to it. So I don't know. That one was just kind of mixed in. So I don't even know if maybe it is a sewing tool, but I kind of assumed it was maybe some sort of a button hook. This is a box filled with bank pins. I've never heard of bank pins. And when I open them up, they're these tiny little porcupine quill type pins that when you pick them up, half the time I get them stuck into my fingers. Oh, that's not the right one. There's a couple big rusty ones in here too, but you can see they're these tiny little pins. So they've got a head to them, just a little flat metal head, but they're very short. So I don't know what those would have been used for. They seem kind of small to be for hemming anything, but I'm assuming they had a purpose because there's a ton of them in here. I mean, this box is absolutely filled. There's gotta be hundreds of them. So I don't know what those are, but they were made by Worldwide. Then there are these pins. So then these ones are Queen's Knee Plus Ultra, which I meant to look up. I think that's a Latin term of some sort, meaning superior quality, if I remember correctly, by D.F. Taylor and Company. Most of these don't have enough information on here to know the age of them. There's no zip code, addresses, things like that. But it's this little like sleeve. I don't know if it would have been in plastic or a folder of some sort, that they did a little accordion pleat to the paper and stuck these pins in them. So there's this brand of pins. This specifically says silk pins. Now, if you're familiar with my channel, you know that my ex-wife and I years ago had owned a quilt store for 10 years. And so I'm familiar, more than most, I'm very familiar with sewing and sewing tools. But we sold almost exclusively cotton because that's what contemporary quilters will use for quilting. So I actually don't know the difference between a silk pin and a traditional pin. So there's a little bit longer, even longer than the Queen's Knee Plus Ultra ones, but I don't know if it's something special over the finish. I don't know what the SC means, if that's somehow related to the silk pins and that these are brass. But then there's also this brass set of pins, just right pins, also SC. These are quick penetration. These, no, they're about the same length as the silk ones. So maybe the SC is for the type of pin. Again, so I'm not familiar with all of these, but I just thought the artwork on this was super cool. And the fact that all these sleeves still have the pins in them, I just thought was really, really neat. Unfortunately, the back cover or back piece of this one came off. But some pretty bright colors, cool artwork on that. This one I thought was kind of fun. I'm going to assume it was somehow maybe a hang tag for the sewing machine, but it's like a little needle kit or a needle folder that you actually it only has a few left in it. But make your home sewing easy on a Kenmore zigzag sewing machine. And so you've got kind of some old advertising, from this one. This is dated December 1968. So it looks, a little bow. So I don't know if this would have been sold with a sewing machine or sold with Sewing Notions promoting the sewing machines. Thought that was kind of fun. There's another, that's the needle card. This is actually a sewing kit. I don't think, oh yeah, the needle's still in there too. This was a needle, so that little card, then this one was for Carlton Hotels. So it's got the little sewing kit in there. Another kind of folder. This is more of a traditional needle pouch, needle holder, needle, whatever you want to call it. Fairly advanced. It's got the little piece that comes down. Some of these must have been stored someplace wet because unfortunately a lot of them have rust on them. So you've got this little needle wallet here. Once upon a time, I think it closed. And maybe it still would, but there's a tear at the side, so I don't want to try and close it again. And I don't know what really that material is. It's kind of like that shagreen stuff. It looks very fragile. More pins, kind of a little card of what's left over of some safety pins. But then there's this card of safety pins, which I love, because look at the art on that one. You've got Clinton safety pins on here. And it has a patent date of 1881 and then renewed in 1896. How cool is that? So they're definitely, they're not going to be as old as 1896, but they're probably within 10 to 20 years because why would you still be promoting a patent much later than that? So some pretty cool that that's still in existence. There's this box just with a mixture of tools and things in it. Didn't see this one. I have absolutely no clue what that is. No clue. So there's just a bunch of little metal stuff in there. These cards are hook and eye. Now this one has both the hook and eye still on here. Again, we didn't really do a sewing clothing type sales, so I don't know what these different sizes would be. Kind of compared to the size of my finger. They're not tiny, but they're not huge. This one though appears to be missing all of the matched sides, so it's just the eye and not the hook. But the card is kind of cool. Will not rust. Pansy is the brand. It's got some age issues to it where it's split, invisible loop, but just, kind of cool there. Some other pieces. This is like a remnant of some sort of a promotional card that has some needles in it. These were some of the cool things I pulled out of the box, like these gigantic hairpins, bobby pins, really, really big sized safety pin. I don't know at what point they become diaper pins, but that has the tendency, I think, of the size to be one. A little box, again, with some more needles in it. And then this little bundle that has a couple things. Again, like I said, I think some of it got rusted because you can see that just the tips on these are rusted. I don't know if those will clean out or not, but it's some sort of that one's a needle, but you can see this one has like a curve to it. Actually, is that the one that's the needle? So yeah, so that has a curve to the end of it. So I don't know if that makes it an upholstery needle, something you would like put in and then it curves back out. Again, not something I'm specifically familiar with. And hopefully that rust might be able to clean up a little bit, but it's just kind of fun, with all the ages. So you kind of have all this metal work together, but then you still have the sewing notions to go. So I thought these were all fun. So there's some sewing cards, and a lot of them are actually full, complete cards, still intact. So all 4 of the buttons are still on here from costume makers. Again, not a lot of information on here to know the dates on these, but at the time they would have been sold for 25 cents. Check out the art on this one. You know, it just makes it look older. The Premier Qualité. Again, a full card of 12 buttons on that one, still stitched into place. Again, nothing really indicating the age, and not actually even anything indicating the maker. These I thought were gorgeous. They're kind of like a metallic accent in these. So you can see the remnant of the card says buttons, but they must have used some of the buttons off of it because there's only these 9 buttons left. But just some really cool detail, almost like an, I don't know what you would use those for, kind of almost like an Asian motif. Very cool. Some buttons that were not on cards anymore, just really good size. Like these 2 are a pair. So you've got a really good sized pair of buttons there. Another one, individual black button with some cool detail on these. I think there's definitely some age to those. A little fabric. I'm assuming this was just a decorative rosette, but it was in with the buttons, so I don't know if there would have been a closure that wrapped around that, but it's fairly thin. Bluebird buttons, these look probably closer to, well, I would have said like getting into the 60s, but these 4 buttons only cost 10 cents, so maybe these are older. I don't know, but by the artwork, I don't feel like these are as old, but there's definitely vintage. And then I didn't break apart this because it was tied with some old thread. I'm assuming they're all the same, but just look at the iridescence on those buttons on this one. Again, just the artwork on those. So just a great addition to a sewing room. You know, these I think would look even cool, you know, an individual one mounted on black velvet in a frame. I just think that would look really pretty. Ended up doing some fun research on some of the rest of this. I'm going to throw in this cigar box. It just had a bunch of the sewing stuff in there. There's still a few interesting things in there, including this Lillian Anderson ribbon that's on there. But even like there's a little ad or sheet for the hook and eyes that must have been in the folder or something at the time. So like, there's just some cool fabric pieces and things in there. A cool box here. That, again, I don't think this one's particularly old because that size of a thread spool, I don't think has been around for necessarily more than 20 or 30 years. But the box is containing a lot of other thread, including some that are older. This one is the Homer spool cotton, which was made by the Lysith Thread Company. And I looked up the Lysith Thread Company and I couldn't find anything on it. So that's out of Worcester, Massachusetts. But you can tell just by looking at the spool, that one is a little bit older. They're all wood. The other thing that I did some searching, we have several that are the J&P Coates wood spools. And it turns out I'm familiar with Coates and Clark. And it turns out that Coates merged with Clark in 52. So anything that just says Coates would be prior to 1952. And we actually have a box, Best 6-Chord Spool Cotton. I don't know if these were the spools that were originally in this box. Actually, no, it wasn't, because the box says it was 1 dozen white spools. These are definitely not white, but kind of some cool threads, little spools in that one. Similar to these, so another J&P Coat. So again, these must have some age to them, and that's kind of a mixed anklet shades. I don't know what that means. So 10 20-yard balls, one end of 2-ply, darning and mending. Then there's this, this box, which is actually a candy box from the National Candy Company, Chateau brand, but you open it up, that's also some more thread. And then you've got some trim, kind of a really pretty, kind of a velvet accented trim. And it is wrapped around what looks like a program of some sort for a church school graduation ceremony. So, and I think from the 40s, I didn't actually unpeel the whole thing. There are some references to dates of 47. So anyway, that's kind of in there. Another box from J&P Coates, which has this little promotional sheet in it. And there's just some mixed notions in there, like a button, some other smaller less impressive buttons, some other hook and eyes, just kind of a mixed bag. These gauges, I've never heard of a needle gauge, but it says right on here, first rule for happy knitting is to check your stitch gauge. Well, here's how you do it. To me, it would be kind of a waste to have to stitch something, to knit a swatch, and then have to change your needle because it's the wrong gauge. Seems like there should be an easier way to figure that out without having to waste the work. But, you know, I guess if you're a knitter, you probably just know. And so this was out of someplace in California. Tried to date it. There's no zip codes on here, and Los Angeles is listed. I can't imagine that this was prior to 1940s. So I just think they just didn't have the zip codes on here. Then there's this piece, which, to be perfectly honest, I'm not sure what it's for. So obviously there's some sort of measurement that you could get, you know, measure right angles or whatever, but I'm not sure what you'd be measuring diameters of. So these kind of run the middle. So I'm curious why it's a triangle. I don't know. So that was not marked in any other way, but that was included. And then the last part of the set is this grouping of bias tape and rickrack. So I tried to do a little bit of digging. I did find a reference to Boyle-Tex. The patent was the brand was first named in 1928, but the patent wasn't applied for until 1949. So I have a feeling this is probably after 1949. But it was only 15 cents. So, but I couldn't find anything because my handy dandy zip code doesn't really cover, because all of the cities that are listed on these are too small to have ever had a zip code. Aurora, Illinois is now the second largest city in Illinois, but at the time in the 40s when those zip codes were established, it was not. So this one's Aurora, Illinois. This one is West Warren, Massachusetts. I've never heard of that town, so again, I don't think it's big enough to have a zip code at that time. And then these are both from the, no, this one was also from Massachusetts. These are the two Wrights ones. And then this one was Nafashioned. Who named this company? Fashioned? Oh, Fashioned, okay. New Fashioned? All right, that is horrible. They didn't need the internet back then to have somebody have to spell it. So anyways, mercerized rickrack. This one is from Reading, Pennsylvania. Again, I don't think Reading was large enough, probably still isn't large enough to have qualified for its own zip code back then. So unfortunately, I don't know the dates on these, but just kind of looking at the graphics, I would think 50s, maybe 60s. One of them had a price. So this one was 15 cents. This one was 25 cents. I'm assuming this was later than this one. This one is not priced. So, you know, people might be more familiar with these. They might know more ages. So again, it's just a mixed bag of all this different stuff that if I had more time to research, I could list it all individually and probably make, you know, get my more money back. But I'm just going to post it up, see what happens to it, let the market decide. So I hope you enjoyed. The video got longer, of course, because it's me. But I hope you found it somewhat interesting, and maybe you'll either learn something along the way or be motivated to go do some of your own research to figure out some of the other stuff that I didn't know. So thanks a lot for your time. Thanks for watching the video. Check out my the auction over on my eBay store. And thanks again for putting your trust in Trusty Huckster. Talk to you again soon. Bye.
Well, show me a sign if you're wishing me to stay. Otherwise, I say goodbye, finish out the day. And that sunrise in the morning and you got nothing to say. Oh, that's when I'll be headed on my way.